Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I'm Mike Kenichi, and I'm really excited tonight because I have followed this young woman's career for many years. Of course, you know her as Delilah on One Life to Live, but I got to tell you, as far as singing goes, she's the best singer I've ever heard, and it is my honor to introduce to you the one and only Shelly Burch. And Shelly, thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor for me.
Oh my gosh, that was a very kind introduction. I really appreciate that. I don't know that I deserve it, but thank you so much.
Trust me, you do. And so, Shelly, interestingly enough, everybody has a first love. We all go through first loves, but you first fell in love with a Canavi piano that your father got you when you were like 6 years old, correct? So talk about that story a little bit.
Oh, that's a funny story. And I just had to when I moved from New York, I had to give my piano to the church after, oh, I don't know, gosh, 55 years. But I started playing the piano when I was 6 years old, and I could just go and play the piano and kind of get lost in my world. And it gave me such great joy. And then I was going to be a concert pianist actually until I was about 14 years, well, 14. I was going to be a concert pianist, and I practiced and practiced every morning. I mean, I'd get up before school and practice and was playing my Beethoven sonatas and, of course, Bach and Mozart and everything else classical. And I actually listened to classical music every day. I had a piano teacher that made me listen to classical music and write down my thoughts of what I was hearing. But I I always sang, and I saw my first Broadway show when I was 11. My dad took me to see 1776, but my girlfriend was doing a production of West Side Story, and I saw that when I was 14, and it was literally like a voice on my shoulder saying, "You could do this, and you could do this really well," which I was shocked because I had never actually been in a show. But my piano teacher told me that I had to start practicing 2 and 3 hours a day. And I did my first show, which was the Pajama Game. And I just, that was all I wanted to do was just be in the theater after that. And so even though, I mean, I have a piano. I've never not had a piano in my house. As I said, when I lived in New York before my husband Martin died, I had two pianos, and I had to give away my old my old piano, my old upright, which just killed me. But things must change and life moves on. And so I have a baby grand that I can still go and play, which gives me great joy. So anyway.
Right. And you did a lot of community and regional performances when you moved to DC, correct? I mean, you moved to DC around 13 or 14 years old. I think your father was working with the Republican Party and your family moved to DC. So just talk about living in DC and, performing in regional, performances and things like that.
Well, my dad was chairman of the GOP in 64 and ran Barry Goldwatter's campaign, and I was only just in kindergarten, first grade. So we moved from Tucson, where I was born, to DC for a year, and then we came back, and he was a lawyer, so he went back into private practice. But then we moved back to DC area in 1969 when I was 11, 12, because he was chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC. And I was still, of course, playing the piano then and just kind of a normal kid doing sports and everything. And then I started doing theater, as I said, when I was 14 at a private men's military academy. It had a great theater program. But I started doing community theater when I was 16, and I did Man of La Mancha, and Aldonza was my first leading role that I did at the Silver Spring Community Theater And then I kept on doing shows at St. John's, the military academy, but I went to college. I went to Carnegie Mellon. I was in the first musical theater program there in 19, oh my gosh, I'm dating myself, 1977, which was the first musical theater program. And I had to sing and dance, of course. And I was accepted at Cincinnati Conservatory, but Carnegie Mellon had a dance program as well as drama and music for the musical theater majors. And I was just there for a year, and I realized that I had to move to New York. So I moved to New York when I was 19. So I did things. I never did any shows at my own high school, but they were at a more kind of exclusive boys military academy that had this great director and choreographer. And then I worked at Silver Spring Stage, and then we did another show. I did a couple other shows with the community theaters there, and I auditioned for a couple of the dinner theaters, but just went to college just for 1 year, as I said, and then moved to New York. I was very ambitious, and I was going to be a Broadway star, which was, all my friends, my parents, they were all very nervous, and, everybody thought I was just kind of full of myself, and I was scared to death, but I still, pursued my dream, which, I'm grateful for.
Right. And interestingly enough, you talk about your first Broadway performance, I think maybe 6 or 9 months after you'd moved there. And
Mhm.
you're one of Sammy Davis Jr.'s daughters and Stop the
Yeah.
World. I Want to Get Off. I mean, you get to work with somebody like that who's just a talent and is, one of the most famous performers in the history of entertainment. I mean, that had to be
Yeah.
where you looked at yourself and said, "You know what? I'm really making noise here."
Well, I mean, I didn't think of myself. I was pretty nervous. I mean, I remember our first day of rehearsal and meeting Sammy for the first day of rehearsal, and I'm very tall. I mean, I'm 5'10", and Sammy Davis Jr. I mean, he's just barely. He's like below 5'5", and of course, I tower over everybody. So it's not just that it was him, but he was probably the most talented person I've ever seen, ever. I had worked at Pittsburgh Civic Light Opera the summer before, which is in Pittsburgh, obviously, and I got my equity card. And Dolores Gray, who was Mama Rose in Gypsy, she just awakened me to this unbelievable talent that these performers have. But then when I met Sammy, and he would close the first act. Leslie Brickus and Anthony Lully wrote a song for him called "Life as a Woman," and it was just so beautiful. And he closed the first act, and then he, of course, did "What Kind of Fool Am I" at the end of the second act. And I would just watch him every night from the wings, and I was just, I'd never seen anybody that would just sing from their whole body, and that just moved me so much. Um, and he was so generous, just not only on stage, but he was generous off the stage. And it was just an amazing opportunity for me, as just this. I was just 20 at the time, and we did rehearsals. We started in New York, and then we went out to LA, and rehearsed out here in Hollywood. I'm in California right now. I had been in New York, but then we opened at the Schubert Theater, which isn't even here anymore, and then we went to the Area Crown before we were at the New York State Theater on Broadway, and it was a great honor. So, yes.
Yeah, and I mean, it was one of just many doors that opened for you. And then, of course, 1979, you get a great part as the star to be in Annie, the Broadway production. I mean, that had to be something special. And I think you also played Lily St. Regis as well. So, I mean,
I
you got
did.
to, you get these like parts, and one thing leads to another. But the thing that stands out to me, Shelly, is people really got to see just what a talented singer you were. And we'll get to One Life to Live eventually, but they took advantage of that. They saw what you could do as a singer and they implemented that. But I mean, I've said this many times, like when I listen to your singing voice, like if I'm having trouble sleeping at night, I could just put some of your songs on and it really relaxes you and it's just beautiful music. So I mean, you're singing as great of a performer as you are 10 times a singer as well. You were just tremendous with that.
Oh, you're so kind. It touches me very much. I thank you. I did audition for Martin Charnin in 1979 for the bus and truck tour actually of Annie, and um, he didn't put me in that, and that was kind of a dry year for me. I was doing some modeling and industrials and lots of auditioning and things like that. But I went into Annie and played Star to Be, and then I understudied Lily St. Regis, and then was able to play that part at the end before I was cast into Nine. But as far as singing, and I don't think, and I try to encourage, excuse me, I try to encourage anybody because I taught and I coached kids and young women and even adults for a long time. But it takes a lot of work, and it's not like you just wake up. I know there's great singers on the American Idol and The Voice, and they're really good, and I love to watch those shows. But in order to keep singing, I mean, I just really only stopped a couple of years ago after my husband died, Martin Charnin. And I mean, I sing in church, but it's a lot of work, and I you have to protect your voice. I mean, I've had to have surgery a couple times. I had nodes a couple times, and so the work and the energy that it takes, you've got to stay in shape. It's not something that you just wake up and all of a sudden, you have this great voice. I mean, it's really my identity has been in my performing and my singing, and so it's something that besides, actually, no, but I shouldn't say that. I have three children, and that's really who I am. I'm Dana and Richard and Joel's mom. And that's really my most important identity. So I shouldn't say that. But as a performer and as a singer, I started in my teens, early, in junior high school. Really, that was my goal, and I've studied. I started studying opera, and that's really also too, I was classically trained besides just singing Broadway. Um, and um, and I love to sing arias and classical music too. My voice teacher was always kind of mad at me that I was singing Broadway and I was belting. Um, he was worried about my voice, and uh anyway, you have to really take care of your voice, and it's hard, but it's gives such joy. I mean, um music touches the soul, I think, and that's what you're saying too, that and my husband Martin Charnin, who wrote the lyrics for Annie and Two by Two and was my director in Annie, he was a lyricist. And it's not so much just the music though, Mike, but it's it's the lyrics. And, if you can put a song together that if it touches anybody, it's really through the words. And I think that's what gets lost today so much are just the words. And that's really it is the combination of the music and the words that really I think is what you're hearing too. Um, but studying, and working. So
Yeah, most definitely. And the thing is, Shelly, a guy by the name of Frank Rich, he wrote for the New York Times for many years, and he
oh
was
yeah.
he was as tough of a critic as anyone. And that's where you had to kind of think to yourself, now you can't pay attention to all that stuff because you're working all the time, you're busy, so you can't get caught up in articles. But he wrote a great article about you where he praised your performance in Nine, and he wasn't one that always gave out praises. So the fact that he threw compliments your way like that, I mean, it to me it just spoke volumes of just the outstanding singer and performer you are. And I mean, a guy like Frank to do that, that's where you had to really feel good about where your career was going.
Well, thank you again. And I as a performer, we just at least I was just trying to do my job. And I remember when I went into Nine, which was after Annie, and I had been an Annie for 2 years actually, and had been auditioning for lots of other things. But my agent called me to come and audition for Tommy Tune, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that was a big deal. Of course, Maury Yeston, who wrote the music and lyrics for Nine, and um, they cast me as a movie star, and I was just like terrified, and I just went in, and they gave me this song called "Unusual Way," and I remember singing it the first time, and it was in this little room upstairs where of the New Amsterdam Theater, which was the where the Ziegfeld Follies, the Midnight Frolics is what they called them, and Tommy Tune wanted to have all the showgirls kind of aura with all of us 21 women. And anyway, the first time learned Unusual Way and I sang it, and Raul Julia was there, who was the star, of course, and just unbelievable. I mean, I was so touched and moved. And I knew when we did the workshop that something was going to happen. The show was going to be great. So, if Frank Rich was kind, then that was just God's favor. And it was just being in the right place at the right time and being given the right song.
Yeah.
It wasn't I was I, I like I hope to think that I was ready because I had been studying and working, and I was in taking class. I was a dancer, I was an actress, but I was working at all those things. And again, encouraging anybody that you have to work at all these things and you have to constantly be working on them. um, and I remember meeting Frank Rich, and I thanked him. I said, I don't know what I did, but I cannot thank you enough for your kind words, which were pretty amazing. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
Right. Shelly, there's so many songs I enjoy, but two that I never get tired of listening to, and I could listen to them all the time, is Suddenly the Sunrise and Bill. And I just love those performances. And, it captures the beauty of your voice and how great it is and things like that. And like I said, I don't care who it is, Streisand, Whitney Houston, you name it, whoever you want to bring up, you are right there with them when it comes to singing. I mean, you just have that
Oh, you're
voice.
so kind.
And, just talk about, like, I mean, is there any particular song or songs that you love performing, over and over, or do you just love them all?
You touch me, like the sunrise, I am like the sunrise. You have touched me suddenly, the sunrise. Gone the chill of a distant day, gone the darkness that seemed to say, you are lost and you will not find your way. Martin wrote that for a musical called Softly, that Fred Astaire was supposed to star in. He wrote it with Harold Arlen. And so that was a real honor again to sing that. And I can't meet anybody named Bill and not sing, but along came Bill, who's not the
Yeah.
type at all. Meet him on the street and never notice him. And yet to be upon his knee, so comfy and roomy, seems natural to me. And I can't explain, it's surely not his brain that makes me thrill. I love him because I don't know, because he's just my Bill. I mean, those are classic songs that, again, the music and the lyrics, and two, what for Showboat, what Oscar Hammerstein introduced was really where the songs move the plot along, and of course Oklahoma was really the big uh, instrument that really introduced musical theater to really, I mean, just opened up a whole new world. But of course, I mean, with Bill and um, there's just I again, I was just very honored and working with my husband, Martin. He introduced me to many songs that he wrote, and he would write them. Uh, um, there was a song he wrote for Diane Carroll that I used to open up my show with because I did a cabaret that we would kind of revamp. Um, and it's called "I'm Putting Me in Your Hands," and it would go, I'm putting me in your hands," and it was just this great opening number that I could sing to the audience, and Martin just, I mean, I lost him. It'll be 6 years that we lost him in July, so it's been a while. And it's so interesting thinking about those songs too, because of course Annie. Most people know Martin Charnin from Annie, but um, and I'm going to see it out here in California next week. But he wrote, so many numbers with Harold Arlen for Softly, that musical, and Suddenly the Sunrise was one of them. So anyway, that was a great memory. Thank you for bringing that up.
Oh, I mean, it's just, and I encourage anybody who hasn't listened to those, I bet if you go on YouTube somewhere, you'll find them. They are just tremendous. But Shelly, I mean, the thing of it is that it, like I said, singing could open up so many doors, and you see so many singers who eventually they go into acting as well. And it happened for you with One Life to Live. And the thing about your character, Delilah, is you originated her. You didn't come in and play a character that somebody else had played at one time. Delilah was yours. And I always say this, you made it on One Life to Live when you were one of Asa Buchanan's husbands. And, you know, it,
Was, yes,
yeah,
I
what I loved
know.
about the character of Delilah is she comes across in the beginning as, kind of like devious a little bit. She has an agenda, but as time goes on, what I loved what One Life to Live did with your character is they made her so lovable. And, my favorite storyline, which was kind of sad in the end, was when it was your character, Dee Dee and Bo, and they were, held hostage for, several months and things like that. and it was just a remarkable storyline, and it really showed the type of person the character Delilah was. So just talk about your run on One Life to Live, which I believe was 7 or 8 years. It was a long time.
I was on the show, Mike, for 8 years, from 82 until 90. And um I do like this monologue. I do a monologue in my nightclub act that I talk about all the crazy things that Delilah did, and I came onto the show as queen of the rodeo and came in on a Palomino stallion with a gold lame suit, and to find my rich cousin Bo. But then I fell in love with Bo, and he was my cousin, and I couldn't marry Bo, so then I had to marry Asa, who wasn't really his father, but then Asa had been lying, so he really was his father. And then I found out that Asa had been lying, so then I married Bo, and then I found out while Bo was with um oh gosh, who was it? What was her name? Oh, anyway,
Dee Dee.
he
Dee
got
Dee. Yeah.
no, not Dee Dee. That was before Dee Dee. It was anyway. I pretended to be pregnant. And then, Bo found out that I wasn't really pregnant. And so then he divorced me. And then I went in disguise as Jasmine to find out what Bo was doing with Dee Dee. And then they were together. And then I got involved with Brad, and then I danced on the show, and I was like in this club Wildlife in a whole with the poles and everything, and Anthony McKenna was there, and oh, it was Becky Lee. Becky Lee was
Becky
pregnant,
Lee. Yes. Yeah.
and I was not pregnant, but I pretended I couldn't have children, so I pretended that I was pregnant, and that's why I pretended to be pregnant and walked with padding and everything. And anyway, but so I danced on the show, and then there was some singing in there, and but I had a best friend, Samantha, and she had a health club, and then these robbers broke into her health club, and they drowned her in the hot tub. But then and she was married to Rafe, but she wasn't really drowned. She was brain dead. So when they took her out and they took her to the hospital, they found out that she was pregnant. So then I said, I'll carry Samantha's baby. So I had the first embryo transplant in the history of television. And that's when Rafe wanted to marry me, Samantha's husband. I said, you really don't have to marry me just because I'm carrying your wife's baby. But he was such a nice guy, and he was very tall. And he was just, and this was a Buchanan cousin. So I married Ace the father, then I married the son Bo, then I married Rafe the cousin, and I became a good character then. So
Yeah.
I was kind of devious and a little bit lost. I think Delilah was kind of lost back then, at the beginning years. And then when I carried Samantha's baby, I became a good character, and became nice. And I remember crying real tears when Samantha actually did die. Oh my gosh, it comes back like yesterday. And then I became a clothing designer, a dressed fashion designer, and then I got lost in a snowstorm for a couple of months when I was in between my doing like other jobs and auditioning for other shows off the screen. And then Lord Henry, I went, and that's how I got kidnapped with Bo and Dee Dee in the basement, because I reminded Lord Henry of his dead ex-wife. Um, and anyway, poor Dee Dee got electrocuted on the fence when we were trying to escape. And then I started singing in nightclubs with I think his name was Rob. It was so much stuff that was happening. I mean, it's a soap opera. So I became a good character, and then I had this baby, Sammy, who we called her, and this sweet little girl. And then I became a good character. And unfortunately, on soap operas, it's very interesting. When you're a good character, you don't work as much. You have to kind of be more devious, and you know anyway, but it was a wonderful time, and I met so many lovely people, and of course Bob Woods, who was Bo, and Phil Carey, Asa. and then Clint, they were my family,
Yeah.
and really we worked so closely together. And then Erica, um, um, who was Vicky, they were just dear, really wonderful people. I couldn't have asked for more. And the producers would let me go and do some nighttime TV and a little bit of theater here and there. But I always kept singing. My voice teacher was up on our studio was on 66th Street, and my voice teacher was on 72nd. So I would do blocking in the morning at about 7 to like 8:30, and then I would go and have a voice lesson at 9:30 or so or 9 to get back in time for camera blocking at 10:15, 10:30. So you could always fit things in and then go down to the gym. But it was a great 8 years, I have to say. And um I'm just very grateful that I got to sing and dance and and do some good acting. As I said, it was very moving, some of the things that I did. I mean, as I said, I got lost in a snowstorm. I got kidnapped. I had a baby, embryo transplant. I had a uh, I was in a mine and Bo saved me. It crashed down on me. I mean, it was just, anyway, it was great. It was really a great time. So thank
And
you for that memory.
those three soap operas on ABC in the 80s, All My Children, One Life to Live in General Hospital, they were as popular in the 80s as I think they ever were. I mean, the 80s really just took off for a lot of things. And to get to play a part like that in the heart of, where, guess what? High school kids were getting home from school and they were into these soap operas, as were, adults who, especially like the working mothers, if they got home, things like that, they really enjoyed them. So, I mean, you got to play this part really when soap operas, in my opinion, really exploded and took off in the 80s.
Well, it was interesting too because soaps were reality television, what reality television is now, because there was only CBS, there was CBS, ABC, NBC, PBS, and in New York we did have Channel 9, but uh, there wasn't all the cable television stations. So what you're saying about ABC, we were, I mean, when Luke and Laura got married, everybody in all America, watched that. And it was, my brother and sister were in college, and all the kids, they're saying, are scheduling their classes around the soaps. And we would have sports teams. I mean, we had the Phillies come in and soccer teams and all kinds of sports figures who would watch the soaps when they were on the road during the day. And they wanted to see our studio, they wanted to meet the actors. Um, so it was really quite a time. The soaps, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and then all the cable channels came in. So they weren't quite up in the 90s as much, but it was really something. I mean, people would yell at me down the street, I couldn't go into the bathroom by myself. It was it was kind of scary, but it was also very exciting, and my dad was so funny because he would say to me, "Shelly, what did you think this was going to be like? You wanted to be somebody." And I was just like, "Wow, this is really something." But Mike, I really my heart was always in the theater. And so I kept trying to um audition for shows that I could hopefully do like a short run of and take, a little bit of time off to go and away from the soap. the last show, when you're mentioning Showboat and Singing Bill, that was at the Paper Mill Playhouse, and that was in 1989, and that was right before I left New York in 1990, right at the end of when I left One Life to Live. And I it was a lot, I think too, the pressure and working, which I think, at least for me, it was a lot, and I was kind of tired, and a little burned out, at the end. So I left, right in 90 when I was kind of, um, a little bit ready for a change.
Yeah. And change could be good, Shelly. And one of the things, I'll never forget the Super Bowl. I think it was 1991, and Whitney Houston did a great rendition of the Star Spangled Banner.
Oh, of
And
course.
two of my favorites are hers and, of course, yours that you played at the Republican National Convention. And I mean, I'll tell you what, like just listening to you two sing that national anthem, I mean, you know, how many people can just carry the notes so well because it's not easy to perform that song. And, you could be a great singer, but you could have some trouble with that song because you want to touch the notes right. And I mean, you just hit every note. When I'm no music expert, I don't pretend to be, but I know what's good music, I think.
Oh,
And
you're kind.
every time I would hear your rendition, I mean, I never get tired of it. I would say you and Whitney are the two best that I've ever heard perform that
Oh my
national anthem.
gosh. That was so exciting because my dad, as I said, he had been chairman of the GOP, and um, he was. It was just so exciting because he was rewriting George Senior's speech, for that night that I performed. But because I grew up in Washington, I'm a Redskins fan, and they're still the Redskins to me. I know they call them, the Commanders, I guess
Commanders. Yeah.
now, but I was able to sing the national anthem at four, um, Redskins opening games, and so that was something that was so exciting for me, and of course singing at the Republican convention. But I actually did three Republican conventions,
Yeah.
and I did, first that was in Detroit, in 80. I guess it was, gosh, what year? This was a long time ago. In 84 and 88.
I think
No,
when Reagan was running
80.
the second time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Or
it
the
was
first. Yeah.
80. So Detroit was 80, Dallas was 84, and New Orleans was 88. And that was the first year then I sang at the Redskins game in 88, 89, 90, 91. And it was I love to sing the national anthem. I mean, and I sing it classically, I sing it straight. Um, it's in the key of B flat, in case anybody would like to know. And I always had my pitch pipe, though at the Republican convention they had a huge band, and then at the Redskins games they had a band. I mean the whole, oh my gosh, it was just so exciting. But I sang it a cappella many times at the Phillies game and at other, and I'm embarrassed to say I forgot Ramparts one day, one Valentine's Day, not too long. Well, this was a long time ago at the 76ers game against the New Jersey Nets. Oh my gosh, that was horrible. But anyway, then I went on to sing it again for the Redskins and it was fine. But I had a pitch pipe and you blow into the pitch pipe and it's on an F. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's? I mean, it's just, it's our national anthem. So I always got excited about it.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I love that rendition. I mean, you did it so well, and I mean, it's so great to hear every time I hear it. And the thing is, Shelley, you've never been afraid to make. You said change has to happen. You brought that up earlier in the show, and you were never afraid to change. And you know, 2004 was good and bad for me. I'm a big Yankees fan, and they had to go lose to the Red Sox, so that was tough for me. But my nephew was born that year, and in 2004, you made the change with your family, and you moved to the Pacific Northwest, and you became quite. You were involved in the scene of places in Seattle at the theater scene and things like that. So just talk about Seattle, because everybody I talk to says Seattle is just a beautiful place to be. So talk about that a little bit.
Oh, I love Seattle, and I'll go back. What happened was I left New York in 1990, and I went to Orlando just to visit a friend who took me to church, and it was a big church. I mean, I just decided to leave and really serve the Lord and see what God had for me. So I did church ministry for 10 years, really, and did worship down there. It was a big church, Calvary Assembly. I know it's there still. And my kids went to Orangewood Presbyterian Church school, and I sang at the school there. But I also worked at Disney and did some dinner theater, played Patsy Cline. And then I got back together with Martin Charnin, who had been my director. I hadn't seen him in 25 years, and we just realized that um, we just had been crazy about each other when I knew him, and Annie, and so we just started our lives together again. And he was doing a production of Robin Hood, a new Robin Hood, and he was doing it up in Seattle. So we left Orlando. I took my three kids. I'd been a single parent for a long time, and we moved up to Seattle and we did Robin Hood, and then we started doing the Village Theater, which is right in Issaquah, which is where our little town was, where we lived. It's about 16 miles outside of Seattle, and we did several shows at the Village Theater, and then the Fifth Avenue, which is just this amazing theater. David Armstrong and Bill Berry were the heads of the theater there, and they were just wonderful to work for. I did company. I played Joanne. I sang The Ladies Who Lunch, which was just a great change of characters for me. But um did several well, a couple shows there at the Fifth Avenue, and then had my cabaret. My kids were in middle school and high school, and high school there, middle school, high school, and we just fell in love with the whole Seattle theater scene. um Wonderful people, and it's so beautiful. I mean, we lived, our house backed up to a whole forest, and we had of course deer and coyote and everything in our backyard, but we also had beautiful mountains. But the theater um scene, we just really loved it. But Martin, after being there for 7 years, he just really wanted to go back to New York. And so we left our daughter at Seattle U. She was a tennis player. None of my kids are in the theater. Never. I mean, after being even with Martin and with me, they never were. I mean, my daughter played the clarinet and the flute, and she was so talented. My younger son played the guitar, and my older son the drums, but none of them had any inclination. They heard me coach all these little girls, and every morning, or Saturdays especially, I would have a whole long uh, line of girls and teenagers at my door, and the kids would be awakened with La Luce, and all these exercises. They would laugh at me. But Martin just wanted to move back to New York. And so we were in Seattle from 2004 until 2012. And then we moved back to New York. Um, and my younger son was still in high school. So he, of course, came with us. older son was in college, and then Dana was in college too. And then we just started doing theater in New York again, and I did my cabaret there, and Martin was doing some other shows as well. And his daughter Sasha is in New York, and his grandkids. His older son lives in Florida with his grandson down there. So we were back on the East Coast, and that was really, good for him and making him happy. I hated to leave the mountains, but New York, there's nothing like New York, as you
Yeah,
know.
there's really not. But Shelly, I'll tell you, I mean, it just goes to show that you you always felt like the fans deserved the very best, and you weren't just going to stay in one area all the time. You were going to make sure that fans got to see you on the East Coast, they got to see you on the West Coast. You made sure that you have made the most of what your talents are, and that you allowed everybody to see that. And that's really what is special about you, is you always went out there and made sure that everybody got to see what you do and things like that. And you just have so many fans across the world that really, admire your music and what you bring to music. Because, it's one thing to be a great singer, but you have to tell a good story, as you said, and the lyrics are important. And you always tell a great story with your music. And I think that's important as well.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't know how to do well, as I said, it's really who I am. I'm a performer and a singer and an actress, and a mom. And then my middle daughter is having a baby in August, so I'm going to be a
Oh,
grandmother.
congratulations. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And my younger son's getting married in April. So of course my core is my kids, but my job and who I am, it's like my identity besides being a mom is being a performer. And I never it's hard. It's funny because I've been working at Starbucks the last couple of years because I moved out here after Martin died several years ago, as I said. My daughter and my older son wanted to have me leave New York and come, closer to them. My older son's in Tucson, where my mom is. And so my customers, I sing for them. Like somebody comes in and it's Bill, and I'll sing, but along came Bill, who's not the type at all, and then I'll put their name in and whatever their drink is. And then of course Maria comes in, and I'm singing Maria, and I just
Yeah.
got a girl named Maria. I mean, it's such a part of who I am. And I feel very privileged uh to, I don't know, music, as I said, music is everything, and of course then serving God. And I'm hoping I can sing in my church here too. I just started going to a new church, so I'll see what opportunities can open up and where God leads. But um, it's just great to talk with you. Thank you so much for allowing me to come and just share this time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, Shelley, like I said, I've been a big fan forever. And the thing, like I said, that really, stands out about you is I've never, anytime you like a singer, there might be a song you're like, not one of my favorites, but I could never say that about you. Like and it's almost the same with Whitney Houston. Any song I would hear her sing, it was just fantastic. Elton John, Billy Joel. I mean, you have never had a song where I said that wasn't one of her better ones. I mean, all the songs to me, just they give you that feeling of why you love music so much. And to me, that the reason they're so good is because you give 1,000% to your voice to be the very best you can be, so your fans can enjoy the music you put out there. And that's what, to me, is what being a wonderful performer and singer is really about.
Well, thank you. You're just saying so many nice things, and I don't know that I deserve them, but you're very kind. And yeah, I just heard a recording of one that I had done on the soap of Home from The Wiz, and that kind of sums it up, you know. When I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing. It's just such a great song, and it just kind of sums up. I wish I was home. I wish I could be there with the things I've been knowing. You know, I think that's really what music is, you know, it's like home to me. It's um and I would hope that I mean, you know, going back to Sammy Davis Jr. and and even Dolores Gray, if anybody remembers who Dolores Gray is, who was in Kismet, and she did um you know, she was one of the stars of Kismet and did a lot of MGM movies. But when she sang um Everything's Coming Up Roses, when I heard her in college, my first year at Carnegie Mellon, well, actually I was at Pittsburgh Simplified Opera, and I watched her from way up high in the wings and up in the on the fly floor, and I just thought, oh my gosh, is that what you're supposed to do? That's what it means to be a performer. And then when I worked with Sammy Davis Jr., and he just sang from his toes, and he was not a very tall person, you
Yeah.
know, but I learned um from that. Oh, and you know, Allison Smith, who played my Annie, I went into Annie after it'd been running for 3 years, and Allison Smith, who just is an amazing actress, but she was a little teeny thing. And I heard her sing Tomorrow, and she was about 9, maybe 10 years old. And this child would sing from her whole being. And I was just like, that's what we're supposed to do. And people used to ask me, and I don't know if I'm going on too long, but you know, when we were doing matinees, and I was in Annie, and I'd been for like a year, and people saying, "Oh, doesn't it get old? Don't you aren't you getting bored?" And it's just you know, the same show. And I said, "But it's the same show to me, but it's not the same show to them." Um and so every time I always felt you know, being in front of an audience, that was my job, to help you as an audience member maybe feel things and experience things that you can't um maybe you just want to get out yourself. But that's what a performer does. It makes the audience maybe go to a place that they that's what any actor does, whether it's, you know, certainly, I mean, me, but you know, someone like Laurence Olivier, or you know, Vivian Lee and Streetcar Named Desire. You know, you want to be brought to a place as an audience member. That's what an actor does, and a singer. And music, I think, transcends that so much.
Right. You know, Shelly, I remember, you know, when Phil Carey had passed away and they had to have the character Asa Buchanan pass away. And, you know, it was like they added some comedy to his funeral when they had the funeral. And I think they brought back a few of you, you know, all the ex-wives and things like that. But
Mhm.
as I'm watching this episode, and I said, if I ever get to interview Shelly someday, I'm going to ask her this. I really felt with your musical talent, it would be so cool to see you kind of do a song about the life of Asa Buchanan. I think it would be so good. I think you would be so great at it because you are so talented at not only singing but writing that you would put together a tremendous song in honor of Asa Buchanan. I always thought about that. I mean, is that something you ever thought about?
Oh, I had been off the show for 12 years, so it was just such a great uh honor, I guess, for me to be there in New York again, and it was right after 9/11. Um, so I was just glad that they thought of me to bring me back. And Still, Carrie, oh, what a great guy he was. He was such a good guy. And if I could have, I don't know what I would have written for him other than he just was just a really special person. And he always made me feel like a million bucks. Um, and So it's interesting. But I was just glad to be back after 12 years of being off the show that they thought to bring me back. That was really special.
Yeah, it really wasn't for, diehard One Life to Live fans to get to see you make a return, in the 21st century, because it had been many years. And as you know, soaps evolve with change and they were changing. So, I mean, we got to see an updated version of Delilah. But, Shelley, let me ask you this. What is the thing that it's hard? I'm sure it's hard to pick one thing, but what is the thing you're most proud of in your career if you had to pick one thing?
Um, well, besides having my kids, that that's not but my career so much. But it's really interesting because I could say when I sang Unusual Way for the first time, and got a Drama Desk nomination, um, when I first went on a Star to Be. Um, but the thing in my career, and I think I was most proud of, I used to do prison ministry, Mike, and at my church. And the first time I went, I had a boom box, if anybody knows what a boom box is, just a tape recorder, and I had these tapes. And I remember going and walking into the women's prison in Orlando, and I was going to help with the singing with these other ladies from the church. And these girls that were in the jail, they said, "Delilah, it's Delilah. She's come to sing for us." And they felt really important. And I was like, oh gosh, it's just me, Shelly. But they they valued, that somebody would come into the jail to sing for them. And that was the when I walked into the jail, I was most proud of that moment, and that I could do something. And I think that's the most important thing. We can have a big career, but it's if you don't give back to, the community, and that was just how God used me. I mean, but and I will never ever forget that. And every other Saturday I would go in for several months. Um and um and those women, they were just so happy that Delilah was coming. Um but it was me, it was just Shelley.
Yeah.
But God was able to use me, and I think that's something that it's really important that we all do. You just never know where you can be used and really minister to people.
Right.
So,
Well, Shelley, this was a real honor for me. I want to thank you for giving me a few minutes today. I've always wanted to interview you. But first off, congratulations on everything you've done in your career, because it's been a remarkable career. But thank you for giving fans like myself so much
oh,
joy, because every time I hear your music, like I said, I mean, it just, I feel like, any stress I might go through, if I listen to your music, it relaxes me and I truly enjoy it. And that's a credit to the passion that you have and the hard work you put in. So I really do applaud you for that. And thank you for giving me a few minutes today.
Thank you so much. Of course, it was my pleasure, and you certainly made my day.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And folks, I said this many times. This person is such an impactful and inspiring young woman, and the music that she's provided us over the years for fans like myself, it's something that will leave an indelible mark on all of us because she goes out there each and every day trying to be the best person she could be, not just the best performer. And you see this hour that you got to spend time and listen to her talk and the stories she shared with us. Just what a wonderful human being she is, as well as a gifted and talented performer and singer. And I will say this, and I am not afraid to say it. I am confident when I say it. She is the best singer I've ever heard. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kanishi saying, good night, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mike.